about 8 minutes. So we have our speaker, Donald, is ready, good to go, and we'll start off in 8 minutes. So thank you so much for joining early.
That's great. Thanks, Hassan. Yeah, and so also from my side, welcome everybody that's joined in early. I hope you've had your breakfast and your coffee or your tea, whatever you prefer. We're going to run through a quick hour with us. So thanks for joining us. Let's see.
So Donald, just a few things. If you can please mention the Q&A part to the audiences, and that once they finish the webinar, they'll be getting a pop-up of a survey with 5 questions. And if they can please answer those questions, it'll really help us understand how we did.
Absolutely. Thanks, Hassan. Yeah, once we kick off, I'll be sure to mention that we do have the survey. It is a wonderful thing to interact with our customers. So those that are early, at least you can get that message. Please give us your feedback and even reach out to us on our email, sales@fpt.com.sg. That really helps us to build our presence and build our customer relationships as we keep improving.
And if later, if anyone has a question that they would like to orally ask, not type it in, they can just raise their hands and we can get them to use their microphones. So we'll allow them to use the microphone to ask the questions.
Okay, that'll be an interesting one. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. We will start off in about 6 minutes.
Great. Okay, and thanks to those that have joined early. We're going to be kicking off in about 6 minutes time. So I hope you've get yourself some coffee, something to drink, and be prepared for, and I hope to receive a lot of your questions. I think that's the best part of these webinars, is the interaction with customers and your experiences from your personal work experiences with the products and with the applications. Yeah. Great. I really like this annotating tool. So yeah, okay. I'm going to be using that a little bit today. It's a lot more helpful than previous. Okay, great. So good morning again, everybody. We've got about 4 minutes to go. We'll be kicking off on time and looking forward to interacting with you, our customers, and our contacts around Southeast Asia. So please feel free to engage with us. Look forward to it. All right, for those of you that have joined early, we will be having a Q&A at the end, questions and answer session, and then also to have a survey with 5 questions, which we hope that you can help us out to answer. Give us feedback. Honest feedback is always welcome. Do our best to answer your questions and keep improving every time we do these. And if there's other topics and areas that you would like us to dig deeper into, please feel free to make comment on that as well.
2 minutes to start.
That's great. Right, good morning, everyone. Yeah, just under 2 minutes. We'll get moving with our webinar for industrial roller chains. And this is, of course, the first introduction. So there's a lot of areas that we can dig deeper into. So yeah, looking forward to your comments. Okay. Slowly filling up there. Perfect. So we're almost ready to get going. Just under a minute left. So please bear with us. Second.
Thank you, Donald. We can start now.
Okay, great. Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us on this fine day, Thursday the 24th. Looking forward to interacting with all of you. We've got a quick session for 1 hour. So I look forward to your feedback and interaction. We are going to have a Q&A towards the end of the discussion, the presentation. There is a what we call a Q&A box. If you click on that, you can type in your questions, and during the webinar, you might respond to it either verbally or type out the answer. If we can't get to it, we'll respond to you afterwards via your email, which we have your contact, so we'll be able to interact with you. And then we have a survey, a short survey, 5 questions at the end, which will help us improve the quality of these webinars. And of course, if you do have areas where you would like us to dig deeper in and really go down into some more of the technical info, maybe problems you're having, please feel free to reach out to us. We do have distributors and a distribution network and distributor partners around Southeast Asia also there to support you. And they, yeah, this is how we reach out to the market. So today we are going to discuss industrial roller chains. We've had a few webinars before this where we focused on other power transmission products. We thought it would be a good session to kickstart with the basics of roller chain. A lot of this is pretty standard and straightforward, so hopefully you've had exposure to this. If not, I hope you find it informative. So again, my name is Donald Briley. I'm based out of the Singapore office and supporting our Southeast Asia region. You can always please feel free to visit our website, www.fpt.com.sg. We've got a lot of downloads and a lot of catalogs and technical information available there. If you can't find it, again, just reach out to us at our email address, sales@fpt.com.sg, and then we will be able to get back to you with that data and info. So let's get moving. So what is drive chain? It's a very wide area of discussion, and there are thousands of applications and uses. But typically we have 2 categories. We have roller chains for driving, just power transmission. And then we also have conveyor applications. So In the photos there, we've got a mix. 3 of the photos are conveying applications, and 1 of them is a driving application. So typically, you've probably seen on a bicycle, that is drive chain. The concept has been around for many, many years and has been advanced with the industrialization, automation, quality control, material technology. These are the things that advanced the technology that's been used with drive chains. So industries very wide, very broad, from pulp and paper, steel, food and beverage. There's many areas that chains are used. A personal favorite for me is in the bakery industry, where you make bread. It's something about the fresh bread smell, and they use a lot of chains in those type of industries for the various reasons of the application demands. So as you can see here, standard drive arrangement would be a drive sprocket and a driven sprocket. And the reason you would use chains is to deliver positive power. So power, torque, and speed, these are all related. And with a chain and sprockets, you can also have a drive speed ratio, which means you can change the speed between 2 shafts. Okay. And chains typically that we're going to look at as the driving is used for transmitting power. So on a motorbike, you have power from the engine being transferred to the rear wheel. That's the same concept. The interesting thing about chains is that they are synchronous. So the rotational speed can be different, but the timing is the same between the 2 shafts that are connected by chain. So synchronization is important for some applications. It's not exactly accurate because of the clearances between the chains and the sprockets. So if you do need very accurate synchronization between 2 shafts, you probably have to use a different type of chain. We have something called a timing chain, quite specialized, used in automotive industry as well, in the engine of a car, and those are more specialized. So we're going to focus on the industrial, more catalog-based drive chains this morning. Okay, what does a chain look like? Very basic construction, pretty standardized and uniform. So what we would look at is you have the roller link, and this is alternating between a roller link, a pin link, a roller link, and then to connect all of these things together, a connecting link. And each piece of chain is made up of a pin, which you can see here. I'm going to draw and highlight. So let's see if I can do this without annotate. So here it is here, your pin. All right, so those are uniform and standard. The pins are the same across the chain. So when we make them and manufacture, they're uniformly made, and typically alloy steel with some heat treatment to give them the strength that's needed to transmit the power. Then you have the bushing, which is over the top of the pin here. And then, of course, it rolls, it's loose, and it can roll freely and independently. Okay. So the bushes here are press fitted into the inner link, so they do not move in the inner link. And you have 2 bushes, and that then is slipped over the pin, and the pin here is press fitted into the outer link plate. So what happens then is your pin rotates inside your bush, and this is how the chain is able to articulate and move freely. Then your roller can run and roll free. And the reason you have these rollers is when you engage with the sprocket, the rollers then sit fixed and steady in the sprocket, and the bush rotates within that roller as the chain articulates around the sprocket. So those are pretty important things, and important that the uniform size and shape of each of these components is maintained. I'm sure you've heard of the phrase, a chain is only as strong as the weakest link. And that's exactly true. If one of these pins is sub-quality or there is a heat treatment issue, the whole chain is useless. The whole chain fails. If there is a roller that is not up to level of quality, the roller fails, well, the whole chain fails. If a link plate it has some issues, maybe there's a material defect, that link breaks, the whole chain breaks. So it's very interesting with that phrase, a chain is only as strong as the weakest link. So important to have uniform quality control when making these components. So here is your roller link, and I've tried to express it. Probably the picture quality is not the greatest on the chain components, but bear with me. So a complete roller link, which is your inner link, has inner link plates, 2 of them, 2 bushes, and 2 rollers. The bushes are press fitted into the inner link plates, and the rollers then slip over the bush and they're free to rotate. So an inner link, because a chain is alternating, it goes inner link, then outer link, inner link, outer link. So that's important as we get to the chain length discussion later. Okay. So we then have a pin link, and a pin link consists of 2 outer plates and 2 pins. These pins are press fit into the link plates, and then the head of the pin is riveted. So it's basically mushroomed over or bent over through a process of riveting. And this means that the pins, they are slipped through the bushes and then press fitted into the link plate. So that's during the assembly process. Okay, there are other ways of securing the pin to the link plate, and I'll explain those shortly. So some of the techniques that we use for the standard link plates, they are usually riveted for the standard assembly process. But to make it easier for shipping and storage and uniformity, a standard length of chain is usually 10 feet or 3.048 meters. And that is a standard adopted globally. Oh, my apologies. Chains can be made in different lengths. You can also manually cut them yourselves to whatever length you need. And I'll show some examples of long length chains later. But then to connect a chain, you need to have a master link or a connecting link. These 2 terms are often used depending on which part of the world you are. So connecting link or master link, they're the same thing generally. So a connecting link is the most commonly used, and each box of chain, a standard box, 10 feet, has 1 connecting link inside the box. And there are different types of connecting links. The standard usually is this spring clip design. There is also the cotter pin arrangement available, usually more available on request. Then we have the standard offset link, and I'll try and explain what that does in a moment. And so typically these are common items that you can buy as an aftermarket. If you need more master links, they're usually a common standard part number. Okay, so and all of this information is in our catalog, and I'll show that to you in a moment. So how does a connecting link work? Well, as I mentioned, a standard chain link, the outer link plates are press fitted onto the pins and then riveted. With a connecting link, it's difficult to do it by hand to rivet these pins. Normally we need a machine to do that. And so the master link is designed that one side is press fit and riveted pins, and the other side is a slip fit. So this is the master link or connecting link. and we call that the closing plate. And that is a slip fit. And then we have the pins allow for a circlet to be slipped over the pins. A lot of slipping happening here. And this is to keep that plate in position so the plate does not come off during operation. So connecting links, they are the weakest point, usually the weakest point of a chain. So in some applications, the connecting link usually is recommended to go with a riveting style connecting link, which requires a bit of tooling when you do the manual assembly on the application to close the chain into the loop. And those are more specialist. So if you have some problems with connecting links failing regularly, we could probably look at giving you some advice as to what the root cause is. So bear that in mind. We also then have a half link. So quite unique. This is a bush with a roller and a pin in one link. The reason this is used is to create a chain length that is an odd number of links. So bear with me. I mentioned earlier that a chain has inner links, roller link, the pin link, or the outer link. Then, and as you can see, it's alternating. So this means if you close the loop and you count the number of links, you would have an even number. But that means that the length is then dependent on that even number. In some applications, the length needs to be shorter, but you have to use an odd number of links. And that's where this half link or crank link is used. So please bear in mind that the cranked link also has some strength reduction. And depending on some applications, this is not advisable for some applications. So you can apply it to most general applications. If you need the chain to be shorter, you can use a half link to then shorten the chain by only half a link, as opposed to removing 2 links and reducing the chain even further. So it's about the length of the chain that you need. Okay. So we've spoken about a few concepts, and please feel free to ask some more questions if you need to in the Q&A box. For those of you that have joined us, you can type your questions there. You can put your name or be anonymous. So here is what is the pitch? And I've been speaking about links. So in our lingo, a link is a pitch, the same concept. So one link is equal to the pitch. The reason pitch is used is that is a finite distance measurement between the 2 pins of a chain. And this will become more clear when I show you the catalog page, because we have various standards, international standards that are applied, and that governs the dimensions of the chain. So the pitch is just one of the dimensions that is governed by the international standards. And that's quite important when considering a selection, and also when considering to reorder something that you have. Usually you need to identify what you have, and one of the criteria is the pitch. Okay. The reason I'm focusing on pitch is because this also, maintaining the pitch of the chain during production is very important, because the more accurate you can maintain the pitch, the better the quality of the chain. So there are some allowances, because as I showed you the components, there's lots of components. So each of those components needs to be machined and manufactured very accurately to give you a uniform pitch. And the reason that's important is if your pitch is too variable, it does not interact or engage properly with your sprockets. And then you have noise issues, you have problems with the service life. So pitch is one of the key criteria to a good quality chain. Okay, so when we look at identifying chains, and this can be for either doing a selection or identifying what you have on site for replacement, we need to identify the size of the chain, and these are important dimensions. The pitch, that is the distance between two pins. And the way we do that is by using our vernier to accurately measure the pitch between the two pins. The next dimension important is the width between inner plates. And let me highlight those here so that you can see exactly which ones I'm talking about. So this dimension here, which is the inner plate, let's see if I can make this a bit bigger, which is the inner plate here. There's your inner plate. Now we need to measure the distance between those two plates. Okay, that's the second important dimension. Next is the roller diameter. Now, please bear in mind that if a chain is worn, possibly the roller diameter might not be exactly what the catalog shows you, because there might be some wear on the diameter, the outer diameter, and the same goes for the pitch. So if the pitch that you measure is not exactly what the catalog is showing, or as long as it's close, this typically then indicates that it's a standard towards that of the catalog. Most of the chains that, the chains we supply have the series stamped onto the side plates. So that does help a lot, that you can just identify what the chain size is on the link plate. In some applications, there might be corrosion, and then the link plates have corroded. You don't know the stamping might be gone. So that's where this becomes important. Next is if you are able to measure the pin diameter. This is important. The plate thickness and the overall width. The reason plate thickness is there are some series of chains that are look standard and measure standard, but only the link plates are different sized, either thicker for specific applications. Okay, we've got one person just raising their hand. If you've got some questions, could we leave it towards the end or type it into the Q&A box, if that's all right? Perfect. So let me just move this annotation here.
Sorry, Donald, we have
yes.
Sukumaran, I think. Please, I apologize if I'm pronouncing it wrong. I think they have raised their hands, so I will allow them. Is it okay if I take the question now?
Yep, sure, go for it.
Okay, so please unmute your microphone and you can speak.
Good morning, sir. Any question from your side? Maybe just an error on the hand up. So, Kumaran, good morning.
Morning.
Excellent. Any questions? How can we help?
No. Carry on.
Okay, excellent. No worries. So yeah, again, if you've got questions, just type them into the Q&A box, or yeah, you're welcome to raise your hand and we'll reach out to you and answer some questions immediately. Don't want anybody getting confused with what we are discussing here. So, all right, let's crack on. So some chains, and again, over the years, there have been developments. So these are just the basics. I need to be clear on that. There are many other series of chains available now, and this is a kickstart. So typically standards, you would see a simplex, one row, one strand, duplex, and triplex. These are the most common number of strands we see in industry. In oil and gas and some heavy applications, they might have more strands, wider, and those are then designed specific for those applications. And as you can see, they're pretty useful executions, because you can have basically the same strength rating doubled in almost the same envelope, dimensional envelope. So chains are quite versatile with that. If you select on one chain and you need to increase the power rating, you can often just go to 2 chains. So it just becomes a little bit wider, but the diameter stays the same. So typically a single strand would just be 1 row with pins across and 1 set of rollers and bushes. A duplex will have, it's basically 2 simplex chains together with 1 long pin. The pin extends all the way across, so it's longer pins. The bushes and the rollers are still the same length effectively, and then you have additional link plates that through the middle. So the difference is that you have a long pin joining. Okay, and then triplex, it's the same concept. We add another row of chain, and we just increase the chain length. So, the chain width. And this is the pin effectively is a long pin all the way across. And that's the difference. So the bushes, the rollers are still the same length. So those are all common standard dimensions for the chain. We just add these longer pins that connect a triplex chain. The same goes for 4 rows, 5 rows, 6 rows. We can go quite wide. And I'll show you an example of some of those. Okay. Oh, sorry, hold on a second. Let me just get rid of my annotation. Yeah, there we go. All right, so there's 2 common standards in industry. I'll talk about a third, but the most common we see is your British standard chains and American standard chains. American standard chains, typically they have specific part numbers, and I'll show you some of those now. Most common in Asia Pacific is your American standard roller chains. There are some original equipment manufacturers that use British standard chains, and I'll show you the difference between them as an example so that you can understand why is one selected and not the other. Please bear in mind there is an overarching ISO standard for chains, ISO R606. There are a few revisions of that. There is a German standard for DIN, the BS, and an ANSI. And these standards, what they do is they govern the dimensions of the chain as well as the tensile strength, right? The tensile strength, I will explain that shortly. The reason that these standards are important is because a chain, to be called a certain part number, must conform to these standards. If they don't, then the chain cannot be labeled that part number. It needs to be something different. And this is important because in applications where you have, they've been selected with a specific size to now install something different without checking the application requirements for strength could decrease your service life. All right. So, and all of this information in our catalog, we do show exactly the dimensions that are shown here. And this is just a snapshot of our catalog. And I'll show you that link for the catalog later. Just as a side note, I mentioned motorbikes earlier. So motorbikes have quite an interesting design feature to increase the lifetime of motorbike chain. Manufacturers have gone and installed little O-rings to seal the chain, and this helps to keep lubrication between the pin and bush. So usually motorbike chain, you can't put too much lubrication on the outside because it goes everywhere and basically puts oil over your bike and over your legs and so on. And so therefore, to keep it a little bit drier, the inner workings then can be sealed off. So lubrication is held in between the pin and the bush. So this also is applied to some specific special industrial applications. So just a side note there for you. Typically, I'm sure you recognize chains articulate. They bend, but they bend in one direction. In one plane. There are more specialized chains that we do make where the chains are designed to be able to curve in a different direction. So the normal articulation would be in one plane. A side bow chain then can curve as well. This is very common in some food and beverage applications where it's a conveyor application. So I thought I would just highlight this one. It is something of a design feature that allows the chain to curve. Quite unique. Okay. I pulled this one as well. We have your standard chains, which you can see here. Let's find the photo. Has a figure 8, effectively, the figure 8 shape. So that figure 8 shape we call a waisted sidebar. And the reason is because it saves material. So the shape here, it almost looks like an 8. Okay, so an 8 looks like, oh, that's an infinity. It's a waisted sidebar. And the reason that's used is because it reduces the material used on the side plate and also reduces the weight of the chain. So over the years, those dimensions have been optimized so that the chain, where the material is actually needed, is then optimized. There is also a straight sidebar, right? And the straight sidebar, this is very common for conveyor applications where you need the product to rest on the flat surface. And this straight sidebar is also used for heavy duty applications, but I would say mostly used in conveyor systems. Okay. There are, as I mentioned, a lot of executions. So I just wanted to show a few of them just to get your creative juices flowing. And if you do have questions specific on these, there are chains used in packaging machines and so on that use extended pins. And this is then, you might have little rollers or little attachments joined onto the chain. So as I mentioned, chains can be quite versatile and used in various applications. Okay. They also can have attachments. So the chain side plate, which is that waisted side plate design, also could have, when you make the side plate, you can create an attachment, either a bent attachment or a straight upright with some holes. And then you can attach whatever you want to it. Again, very common in food and beverage and other fast-moving consumer goods manufacturing industries, where these attachments are often used. Okay. And then I've just highlighted a couple of other attachments. Rubber top, where literally a rubber is vulcanized onto the chain, and that is then soft. So if you have delicate pipes, plastic pipes that need to be resting on the chain, this thing can be used. We also have a saw top chain, which then the top is spiky, and this can be used in logging industry where the wood comes in and it needs to be moved. So the chain, then the teeth at the top bite into the wood and push it along. So yeah, there's many different executions that are possible. Okay, so I thought I would highlight a bit of the manufacturing process. So as you can see from the catalog pages and from the basic pictures I've shown, the components are standardized. So they can be manufactured or in bulk and mass manufactured. Of course, there's a lot of quality control that needs to go into each of those processes, as well as automation. So on the right-hand side, I've just shown a punch machine, which basically creates a stamping machine, which takes sheet metal and it goes through the machine that then punches out these individual link plates. The link plates, so then also they go through heat treatment to adjust the metal structure. And I'm quite proud to say, if you can see the workshop arrangement and the manufacturing arrangement clean, even though this is a very heavy industrial process to manufacture the chains, it's important to keep a clean workshop for health and safety reasons, as well as quality reasons, because once you have that good mindset, standards of quality can be maintained. Okay. Then just to highlight, the process for the smaller chains is mostly automated. There are a few processes involved, which I won't get into today. But as your chains get bigger, it's more difficult to automate a lot of this. So there's still some manual handling that is required. And you can see from the photo the size of the chains that are standard catalog, but the sizing is quite large. So those then typically get pre-assembled by hand, and then go through various processes for the final assembly. I like to show this of everything in its place, and everything has a place. Everything has a place, everything in its place. So clean floors, demarcated areas, batch control. This is what a good manufacturing process looks like when making something like chain, because a chain is only as strong as the weakest link. Okay, and here's some finished items. I mentioned that there are more rows possible. This chain is for the oil and gas industry and has some specific API requirements. And usually this type of chain is then used in quite wide rows for specific oil and gas applications. Okay. And we do have a Q&A from Helmi, pretty interesting one. I'll get to that in the Q&A if you don't mind, so give me a moment. So some examples of applications. Let's see what else I've put in here. I haven't gone into too much detail. Of course, there's many. I thought I would just show you a harsh environment and what chains are then expected to endure on a day-to-day basis. So let's see if this plays for you. My apologies, that is extremely loud. If you do need to reduce your volume, let's just see if that works. I don't know how it is on your side. So I'll just do it one more time. So for those of you that didn't catch it, so this is a steel mill. It's molten steel coming out. Molten steel. It's hot steel bar coming out across rollers, and the rollers are being driven by chains, by drive chains. So you can see dark, dirty, dusty environment, and here comes the all right, so this is the type of areas that chains are expected to operate. Very harsh, very heavy, immediate online direct starting. So that's why chains are used, because they are quite resilient. The materials in chains are resilient, and with a good selection, you can get quite good fatigue life out of drive chains with the right selection. So again, just to highlight some other areas you might have seen. On the left-hand side, dusty and abrasive environment. This is a cement mill. There is lime and clinker and all sorts of abrasive dust that's in the environment that lands on the chain. So it needs to work and operate in that. A dirty environment on the right-hand side. This is, from what I remember, a painting line where they paint cans, and it's very much over lubricated, but for a good reason. So a lot of the dirt is clinging to the outside and not going into the working components. So quite interesting demanding applications for chains. Okay. I mentioned in the beginning that there are applications with long length requirements. So this is called a looper machine or an accumulation machine. It's in sheet metal for galvanizing process. And the chains then need to be assembled in very long lengths. Not only are they long length, they also need to be matched. So the lengths need to be matched and accurate. Because if they're not the same length or accurate length, the loading is then not equal between the two chains. And this has other process problems and operating problems. So for these more specialized applications, there are additional quality control checks needed and important considerations when doing the assembly, when doing the purchasing for these long length applications. But quite interesting to show this. Okay. Onto lubrication. So we got a few more minutes and I'll just rush through a little bit if you will bear with me. So lubrication, again, very important aspect of chain. It's a very wide field. Often lubrication needs to be specific for your application and your maintenance requirements. But the general theory is you need to get lube in between the side plates and the clearance between the side plates and into that working surface between the bush and the pin and the roller and the bush. Those rotating surfaces, they need lubrication and re-lubrication. So you can refer to our catalog. If you do have more specific problems with lubrication, please feel free to reach out to us. Okay. So what are the advantages of drive chains? Here you can see this is an oil and gas application. Very wide. It's driving some pumps. 98% efficiency. So the power transfer, the losses are only 2%, which is not too bad in a driveline system. It does not slip. So considering the chain is installed properly and the tension is correct, there's no slip. There's no power loss due to slip. It's fairly compact. So the metal that's used is alloy heat treated components. So you can have a compact, power dense drive. It's usually lower speeds. And that's important to notice. The higher speeds, then you face lubrication issues. You face some other centrifugal force challenges. So it's usually lower speeds. They can handle high temperature. You know, it's metal. They can typically go up to above 250 degrees without too much challenge to the material structure. Once you get higher temperatures, important to consult with us because there's usually some sacrifice on the strength of the chain. Okay, pretty durable. You know, they can work outside, wet environments, dusty environments, very durable. And elongation, the concept of the chain, once it's wearing out, there's quite a wide range of elongation allowance, which means the chains can operate for a long time. And yes, you can also use them to drive in both directions. If you have two shafts that need to rotate forwards and backwards frequently, you can do it with chains. Okay. Some disadvantages: they can't be used as clutching. So this is typically where you have you need slip, and if there's slipping that's needed, you can't do it with chains because it's a positive drive. It's limited misalignment. You can't have major misalignment with chain because it's fixed and it needs to articulate in one plane. If you do need misalignment, usually that's specific applications where you would use possibly side bow chain, but then there's other requirements. It does require lubrication. All chain does. There are some special series of chains that we manufacture and provide that are lube-free, but you can lube them to increase their lifetime. So those are more specialized. And again, it does not dampen vibration. So if you do need vibration dampening, usually there's other requirements to the application, but chain won't dampen vibration. Okay, then a couple of tips. So if you've got chain that's an even number of pitches, you want to use a sprocket with an odd number of teeth. And this combination of a sprocket with odd and the chain with even helps to increase the overall lifetime of the drive. And I won't go into too much detail on why, but that's just a rule of thumb or a nice thing to do. Okay, typically we don't go smaller than 12 teeth. We do see 11 tooth, but usually that's not so common. Anything smaller, and there's other challenges with the lifetime of the chain and the lifetime of the sprockets. But common is, anywhere 11 to 15 and 17. These are your common sizes. 13, 15, 17, 19 common sizes for sprockets. Okay. Some facts about chain. They do elongate. Chain does not stretch. If you have stretch, it means the chain has gone above its maximum allowable tension. So the chain has actually gone into the plastic region in terms of the material. It's elongated in that sense, but it's because it's stretched, it shouldn't return back to its original length. So be careful on that. But elongation is common with chains as the chains are operating. And the rate of elongation is something important to measure because that's your lifetime. And it's what happens, your pins and bushes, they're rubbing between each other and they basically lose material. And that's how elongation occurs. So limit about 3% and maximum speed, 5,000 feet per minute. What's that in meters per second? So those of you that have got fast brains, I think that's probably in the range of 2,000 RPM, somewhere there, if I remember correctly. So temperature, again, up to 315 degrees without too many changes to raw material or to the base material, and minus 50 degrees. But for those, you need to consider the type of lubrication. So if the temperature is really low, you need to consider the type. And if the temperature is really high, you need to consider the type of lubrication. And then we look at about 15,000 hours for operating life. That's a common gauge. That means if the drive is running very high speed and the distance between the sprockets is short, that affects your lifetime expectation. So then when doing the selection, you need to then select appropriate chain that will give you a reasonable lifetime. Okay. So I wanted to just highlight some of the concepts of tensile strength and allowable load. So allowable working load is a function of the pins and bushes and the amount of pressure that those pins and bushes can handle. And there's some combinations with the material strength of the side plates. Typically, we don't publish our allowable working load. Some of our competitors do, and some of the other brands in the market do, as good guidelines. But typically, we work on a safety factor, service factor system when doing a selection. So we list down our tensile strengths, which you can see on a catalog page on this the second column on the right-hand side. And that is then based on the individual chain size. Okay. British standard, American standard, most common that we have in the industries. And what you'll notice is that the dimensions for pitch, which is the distance between the pins, there are standards, and all of them are inch standards, which means it could be 1 inch pitch or 1.5 inch, etc. There are chains that are made with metric pitches, but those are less common in the industry globally. So here's just a comparison between a 16B chain, very common in industry, and an 80-1 chain. So 16B is the British standard, 80 is American standard, and the pitch is the same. The roller diameter is the same, but the width between inner plates is different, and the pin is a different diameter, And you can then see the tensile strength between the 16B and the 80 is different, and that impacts on the weight of the chain. So which one is better? The pitch is the same, the roller is the same, but then the other values are different. And effectively, the 80-1 is usually a more economical chain. It's slightly cheaper than the 16B should be because there's less material used. But then your tensile strength, you have a sacrifice. And also your pin diameter is slightly smaller, so your wear life is also reduced because the pin diameter, if you can increase the pin diameter, you can increase the lifetime generally of a chain. Okay. So we do have a few more slides. I think I'm running behind schedule at the moment. And I just wanted to show you the selection process. So I'll skip through a few parts, but this is available in our catalog. And we have the selection process in detail with an example. And if you do have some questions on this, feel free to reach out to us as well. Here's it in more detail. I won't go through this yet. We are running short on time. So please feel free to have a read. And if you have questions, give us a call. So I would talk to this because I find this is an important factor. So we do have a quick selection chart, which is on the right-hand side. So if you know the speed of your faster shaft and your design power, you can do a quick chain size selection, roughly what size you should be using. Okay? But it all starts out with your service factor. And this is a guideline that we give in our Fenner catalog. And this is then applicable to you as the customer or the engineer. You need to have a look and see what is it that my application requires. If it's a light duty, right? And that light duty is then operating for, so I say here, light duty, and it's operating with heavy start, so direct online, like the video we saw, and operating for more than 16 hours, we recommend a 1.3 service factor. So what that means is we take the installed power in kilowatts, and we then multiply it by 1.3. So for example, if I have a 10 kilowatt motor, bear with me, and I multiply by 1.3, I get 13. Is that correct? Somebody check me. So I get 10 multiplied by 1.3. I get 13 kilowatts as my design power. So that's probably somewhere here. I then trace the line across the graph. And for example, if my chain is running at, let's use 200 RPM, the faster shaft here, right? I would select probably something like in this range here, 20B chain. Here it is here, or a 24B. So that can be your preliminary selection. And then we start going into more detail about the length, the sprocket diameters, and we have those in our catalog, which are there to help you complete that selection process. Okay. So here is just, these are some guidelines on the sprockets, which we then look at the sprocket sizes and the power the sprocket can handle. So we start out with a chain. We get a rough idea of what size chain we think we need. We then go to the sprockets and we work out roughly the size of the sprocket that we need, considering the envelope of the application, which is the space limitations. Then we start filtering down to what is a workable chain selection. Okay. We also then have the ratio, which is the change of speed between the two shafts. And this is just a quick guideline on the sprocket. So if you have, for example, a 19 tooth and a 19 tooth, your ratio is 1. Pretty straightforward. If you have a 30 tooth and a 19 tooth, your ratio is 1.58. That'll be the speed ratio change. Okay. So this is in our catalog and therefore reference and ease of use. Okay. We then also need to have some areas that we change the pitch of the chain into the length of the chain. I won't get into too much of that now. So we're almost done. We've got a couple of questions, and I'm sure there might be some interesting Q&A. Thank you for your attendance. I must say this is just a kickstart, right? So I hope some of these things have sparked your interest, and you can then have a look at our catalogs and maybe dig down into some of the technical details. Of course, please feel free to reach out to us if you do have some more technical questions. So www.fpt.com.sg, that's our website, and our email address there, sales@fpt.com.sg. Yep. So, right, we have a question from Helmi. I have a long chain drive for a conveyor on a dryer. Okay, so a little bit outside of the drives that we were focusing on here, but still using a chain. So very interesting application. There's a problem with corrosion on the roller. Okay, so the temperature is reaching 273 degrees Celsius. Many built up that makes the chain, so it's noisy. So there's probably a material buildup from the application. Is there a best practice of chain lubrication, as oil is also flammable? Yeah, you are correct. And it seems the chain is having overheating problems, possibly, or perhaps there is a chain material for high temperature that doesn't need lubrication. Okay, so interesting couple of problems to pick out here. So corrosion, usually in dryer applications, the conveyor, the chain goes inside the dryer, the temperature increases, it then comes out and goes on the return side. Maybe it's outside of the dryer where it's returning. So then here in Southeast Asia, it's very hot and humid. When the chain is starting to cool down on the return side in the normal environment, it's gone from 273 to maybe 35 degrees, you get some condensation. So this could be one reason. And that condensation basically builds up on the chain and then starts this corrosion process. Usually we see that on the side plates. So maybe this is not that problem. You're saying it's on the roller itself. Okay. So if there is buildup, of material on the roller, this could be from the application. Whatever is being dried could be getting onto the chain itself and then collecting on the sprockets and causing some challenges there. What I've seen in bakery industries, typically the maintenance has to clean the sprockets more regularly to remove debris, and then on a annual basis, the chain comes out of the application and gets completely cleaned and re-lubricated and then put back into the application for continuing to run. You mentioned oil is flammable. Absolutely. So the higher temperature, the stability of the oil, its flash point needs to be checked. So very important, the lubrication flash point. If the oil's flash point is too low, it could ignite. There are some carbon-based spray lubricants, so more synthetics. So they have like carbon as graphite, which then can be sprayed out of a can with an alcohol based solution. That alcohol allows the carbon to travel into the chain round components, and then the alcohol vapors evaporate. You obviously don't do this while it's running because you're spraying alcohol with the lubricant, but it's a carbon-based lubricant. So this might be a consideration. And there are a few brands, like CRC is a brand I think I know that has a carbon-based lubricant. This might be an alternative for you. Or graphite is the same name. And then in terms of materials, well, so 273, it's okay for normal drive chains, normal conveyor chains with alloy steel. Typically, the only consideration is that you would be looking to make sure that the strength of the chain has been selected for appropriately for the 273. You could use stainless steel. Stainless steel is more stable at higher temperatures, but there's a trade-off. Stainless steel is much more expensive, and stainless steel is weaker in tensile strength. So usually I wouldn't consider this. Maybe a coating, a zinc coating could be a useful solution, because the zinc then becomes, it's more stable with corrosion. It's more corrosion resistant, and the zinc coating could be used to reduce that corrosion damage. Okay, so I hope that answered that question. All right, so any other questions coming from the attendees, please feel free to type something in. Possibly some challenges that you're facing in your day-to-day applications.
Looks like you answered all the questions, Donald.
Absolutely. Okay, so what I could do is, let's see if I can do this. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so I think important as to have a visit of our website, and there are some catalogs to download with the selection process. If you could drop us an email to give us some feedback. To discuss, please, yeah, let us know, and we can then focus down onto some of those areas. All right, well, that's all for now. Thank you for your attendance, and I look forward to continuing to engage with you. And please bear with us to complete the survey.
Thank you, everyone. As soon as this webinar ends, there will be a survey which will pop up. Please answer those questions. Thank you so much, and goodbye.